Welcome, everyone, to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner, and with me is...
Anthony. Good evening, everyone. Good to be here.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were
back.
Huh?
It's like good to be back.
Good to be back.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to do the Tony thing and just... You're like... Tony. That's been refreshing that he's not been on the show this last... I'm kidding, Tony. He's probably over there mad. I'm messing with you, man. I'm messing with you. But, you know, you'll catch him on the Friday night. Unfortunately, he'll be on Friday night and Sunday night with me on the live stream, sitting across from me, looking all weird with his dog, with his little cockeyed dog, Banjo. And but we love Banjo. He's cool.
Yeah, he's a sweetheart.
You know, he could be a little bit bigger. I mean, I'm not into little dogs. We could protect the house or something. But I mean, instead he just warns you to. He doesn't. You know, Ernie. He doesn't do anything. He just like warns you if something's there. Then he runs and hides.
Yeah,
he's not.
Oh no,
he's not a tough guy at all.
I got a Jack Russell that's helped us take 14 coyotes.
Well, Jack Russells though are terriers.
Yeah, their mental capacity is they think they're giants.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they'll go after anything.
I had a little fox terrier, and he was something else, man. He was a cool dog, but somebody broke into my house, and they, you know. Yeah, I guess he tried to stop him or whatever, and they took care of him. That's really a sad thing. That was a horrible thing that happened when I was like 13 years old, man. Somebody broke in my house. And not only that, but they stole my baseball card collection.
Oh, no.
Yeah, bless you. So here's what we got going, folks. Check us out on Paranormal Roundtable on the group on Facebook. You can get a lot of cool stories on there. I know I do, and I interact with a lot of people, and I interact a lot on there. Also, Josh Wolf Turner, the Paranormal Roundtable fan page, and then check out the Holistic Healing page that's run by Nellie, and also the prayer group, which is predominantly run by her, and then her own page, Paranormal Lounge. And send me messages through Paranormal Round, Josh Turner at prtpodcast.com, or you can send it to me through Messenger. Also, Josh Turner 940 on Instagram. The other thing we got to talk about is the Patreon. If you want to be a supporter, $10, $20, $30, $40, $50 tiers. The 10 is it takes 2 months, and then you get your swag bag. 20 is automatic. You get an autographed book with either one of those. And then the 30, it goes up. We up the ante. You get 2 autographed books. And then the $40 tier, same thing. You get 2 autographed books, except one of them is one of my books. And then if you want both of my books, you can get the $50 tier. And I'll send you a couple books from my friends. Like I said before, Chad Lewis, Barton Nunley, Ken Gerhard, Lyle Blackburn, Nick Redfern, David Weatherly. Bunch of different people. Books. So I have a lot of friends who are authors and do this. And I know a lot of people, and I get their autographs. If you are from Britain, 2 different people. You can get Paul Sinclair's book, Deborah Hatswell, or you can get both of them if you're on the $50 tier. So don't hesitate to join. If you're from Britain, you can still join, and we will take care of you. Thank you for your patronage and everybody that tunes in and listens. Now, don't forget, Fridays and Sundays, we have the live stream. It's a YouTube exclusive. So if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple or what else do we got? What are we on?
I think we're on Google Play, whatever it's called.
We're on every platform.
Google something.
There's like 15 platforms.
Yeah, Stitcher, TuneIn.
And we have thousands of listeners.
iHeartRadio, whatever, all that stuff.
We try to get everybody to come to YouTube, but they're like, nah. You know, they just...
Yeah.
But, you know, it's cool because you can interact with me on YouTube on the Fridays and the Sunday live streams. That's a way to talk to the other listeners, fans, whatever, and then you can talk to me. And I'll read your chat, and sometimes we'll talk, and sometimes we even let people call into the show, like we did last, a couple weeks ago. We'll have people that call in, and that aren't the scheduled guests, and sometimes we retell stories on Sundays, and Tuesday is the 1 hour podcast, always the retelling of someone's encounters, and then Thursday, we have the guest, which is what we're doing tonight with Ernie DeVoe. So without further ado, let's get Ernie back in gear here. Ernie, so when we were talking last Thursday, we had to stop there kind of on a cliffhanger. You want to continue with that?
I think we were talking about the possibilities of them being able to, I don't want to say dematerialize, I'd rather say walk through the veil. Yeah. In between being solid and in between not. And I think we're also included the movie with Morgan Freeman, Lucy, on that. And the ability to use or access the mind to 30%, where the human is only, I believe 10%, something like that. And dolphins are 20%. And what does happen, it comes out in the movie when you can access 25, 30% of your mind. Let's say that they can do that. That would explain a lot of things. There's also Ron Moorhead thinks along those lines of the quantum physics. And there was a guy in Flash of Beauty. I think you're aware of that, Flash of Beauty. His name is Henry. I'm not sure of his last name, but he's been living with in the Indian community for the past 27, 30 years. And so he has quite a story on there that deals with the quantum physics that he believes is also there too, which really opens up your eyes. Like when people are seeing some of these orbs, I mean, if you're in a haunted house that you know about, Josh, you see orbs and everything. Well, what's to say that we don't have a lot of Indian burial grounds out there? Because we do. And these orbs are really ghosts of dead Native Americans or, colonists, or even the Sabe, the Sasquatch people themselves. What's to say that's not something that's really going on? And that's why we're seeing these orbs, and that, to see maybe a UFO around them just maybe coincidental in a way, even though we understand, those of us that understand, there's no such thing as a coincidence on anything. Everything happens for a reason. So like you were saying, Josh, a report that you got that they actually shot it and it just looked like dust coming off of it or out the other side of it. Was it them being able to alter their being, walking through the veil? It could very well be. For those of us that seen, like you yourself, Josh, we're in no position to say that something is not possible. I believe that there's a lot of possibilities out there at this time. It's like solving one mystery at a time. First, you have to. It's like if you had a flat tire in your car. You got to fix that flat tire. Well, you're gonna wait for 3 more flat tires before you fix the first one and figure out what's going on. You work on one thing at a time, and figure out what's going on with that. And once you have substantial proof of that, then you take another step forward. It could very well be that the reason why they stopped trading with Native Americans was just because of the fact of their spirituality being on a higher plane than ours, and how we just turned against each other and decided that, well, we're going to, trade weapons and kill beaver and, sell beaver furs for money and everything instead of just living off the land. Could that be why they no longer are no longer around people as much as they were, because they don't really trust us? I have several friends who are Native American, and they all have stories of how they used to trade, that their nation used to trade with them, and you find that even historically in the Ohio Valley area, with the first peoples of the whole Ohio Valley, and the skeletons will go into that. You got 8-foot plus skeletons, that they're calling at the Hopewell Mounds, and you can go right into that. But it's ironic that those skeletons are the same size. So what was going on there? I think that they're very highly spiritual beings, and they can walk through that veil if they choose to do that. It's just one of the things they can do, which would substantiate that they, like you were saying earlier last week, that they need meat, they eat meat, they do other things, drink water, whatever. This just a thing that they can do, if they're being pursued, totally disappear.
Yeah, and I don't know to what extent, they're able to do these things. And like, cause you hear about them having young too, like youngsters, but you hear Dogman with that too. But the overwhelming majority of reports, in particular with Dogman, there's just this weird, sinister presence about it. I mean, when we were talking with Deborah Hatswell, she was talking about, she didn't go into details on that case, but at least not as of the recording of this right here. But she said something about this Dogman had footprints that had gone right up to her backyard, and then they stopped. But you get that with these Bigfoot too. And like, I got a report out of Montana, where a Bigfoot it was one big one, and one was obviously a juvenile. It had to be. It was too small. It's like 5 foot tall. It was a little bitty. And the footprints just stopped under a tree. And they went out there, and when they went behind like a clump of trees, but the one tree they were behind, it was not big enough to hide them. And then the footprints stopped right there, in the snow, and there was light snow on the ground. It was late fall, and this rancher, he just, that's all that happened. I mean, he didn't have any other encounters or anything, but he said they looked sickly. But the fact that they went behind a tree and disappeared, now, what causes a Bigfoot to look like it's ill and have like what looks like a young with it? It looked like a female with a youngster. But then they were able to just go behind a tree, and as they rode up on ATVs, these two brothers, it was gone, But I mean, one of my colleagues, Josh Cutchins, he wrote where the footprints end, and it's basically a kind of like my book, Bigfoot Phenomena, and I think Josh's book, isn't it called The Bigfoot Phenomena? Like.
Yeah, I think it's either subtitled "The Bigfoot Phenomena" or it's like where the Bigfoot Phenomenon, where the footprints end, something like that. Yeah,
and it's called the Bigfoot Phenomena or whatever. And yeah, I mean, and Josh is a good friend of mine. I mean, I just was kind of teasing him. I said, because it's called "Where the Footprints End: High Strangeness in the Bigfoot Phenomena." Josh Cutchin. So when Josh. When I talked to him about that book, I said, dude, I'm sorry, I named my book The Bigfoot Phenomena. I didn't even think about it. And Josh is a good guy. He didn't even care. He was just like, whatever. But my other friend, Josh Nanokia, was teasing me. He's like, Josh is going to sue you because you. And so Josh Nanokia he likes to ham it up and clown around. So I messaged Cutchin. I said, dude, you're not going to sue me, right? I made a mistake, and I didn't realize your book was, I said, I was taking the bad advice from Ken Gerhard. Blame him. He's the man that did it. He caused me to name it that. He was like, what about this? And the first one I shot down, and then I came up with Bigfoot Phenomena, and Ken, I think, and Barton and David were all like, yeah, that's a good name. That's a good title. We were all like brainstorming. I'm blessed to have really good friends in my life that have helped me with this endeavors of writing and doing all this. And they were like, that's a good title. And Sibylla Irwin, really, really wonderful person, did the artwork. And it was Charles Hamill. That was his encounter in 1976 on a dam in Oklahoma, the picture on the Bigfoot Phenomena. And the book is available on Amazon if anybody's interested. But that picture, and I remember Jerry Williams was like, hey, you took that picture and me and Barton kind of got into it with Jerry. And so once I calmed Jerry down, Jerry's a Choctaw native, actually really nice guy. He wrote The Predator, Bigfoot, and The Spiritual Warrior's Path. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's what it's called.
And so I messaged him. I said, hey, look, man, we're on the same team here. Let's talk. And he was kind of apprehensive at first. And then eventually he ended up coming down and visiting and just tell you. And so my wife's messaging me to see if I'm okay. I'm not okay, but I'm healthy.
Yeah, I got the same thing here right now. But let me pick your brain for a second here. And I know you know Martin Groves.
Oh yeah,
right?
Good friend of mine.
Well, I've listened to his account several times, and I was just talking to one of his friends about a week ago. Now, let me know what you think of this here. I've been finding from listening to some of these accounts that there's a bit of a connection between this Dogman and Sasquatch, and what I know, and it took me a second to keep that bias out of there on that, but I came across a couple of things, and one of them, and it's out there, but in India, monkeys actually will kidnap puppies. I don't know if you're aware of that at all. They kidnap puppies, and they actually keep keep the puppies, and they feed the puppies so that the puppies actually protect them, warn them of danger that's coming and stuff. Now, I know in Martin Grove's story, he heard 2 whistles, one behind him and one in front of him. Now, that either tells us that, the Dogman can whistle, which I don't know, but I do know that the Sasquatch can, and I do know that in several other encounters, the Sasquatch has been seen around at the same time as these Dogmen have been seen. Now, they've also said that they've heard what they thought were clacking rocks. A lot of dog trainers, they use a clicker to train the dogs. I'm just throwing it out there to get opinions from people. And what if, we'll call it that, what if that there really is some type of a connection where they're using them to maybe run deer, herd deer towards them, help them out. And in return, they're helping them out.
I mean, their territories overlap. We know that because when I started doing this, it was me and my brother. And my brother, he can't talk real good, which apparently I can't right now either. But he can't talk real good because, unfortunately, my brother was stabbed in the throat. I mean, I haven't told people that.
Right.
But my brother literally was stabbed in the throat. He was actually helping. They were beating up a guy.
Oh.
And the guy would have died, I'm sure. But my brother ended up trying to be a good Samaritan. He tried to help the guy, and he got stabbed. But the guy that stabbed him ended up with a broken back. So,
right.
And that was me. I had to step in and basically just cold-cocked the guy and knocked him over a bridge. He lived, but the police were just like unsympathetic toward the guy. But anyway, long story short, my brother and me, we started this together, but I'm the one that talks. He's got a real rough voice. It's messed up because of what happened. And so it's fortunate that he can even talk at all. But I'm the one that can talk. I can talk. And so we would always thought about, like maybe writing or doing, something. My brother was a good writer, he's been published several times with poetry. That was his thing.
Beautiful.
And then my thing, I always thought maybe I'm going to write, but all my fingers have been busted from all the fighting and things that I did, training. And so I decided, look, I'm just going to hang on to all these stories I've collected, and who knows one day. And so I thought maybe I'll use this dragon speak, but then podcasting became a thing. And then my friend Armando talked me into doing a podcast, him and my wife and my brother. They were all kind of instrumental in getting me to do it. And then, of course, Anthony sitting here with me. He was another one. And so we finally did it. And here we are today. But, my brother and I we made a map together years ago of the Devil's Backbone here in Texas. And we did like push pins, the red ones for Dogman, the blue ones for Bigfoot. And overwhelmingly on one end, which would be the east end, was Bigfoot. And then overwhelmingly on the west end was Dogman. But then there was this spattering of reports like kind of intermingled in the middle with which was Dogman and Bigfoot. And in particular, this one area, this area they call the Haunted Valley, people would see both. But then you get this weird, like this plethora of ghost activity. And coming off of Purgatory Road, which is where people see a black dog by this cemetery and then this black goat man creature, I actually saw one of 3 times in my life, I've seen the same BB looking thing in the sky that looked like an orb, but it was like silver. I think it's a UFO type thing. But I saw it coming off of the end of Purgatory Road going on to Ranch Road 12. And I was with my wife. Of course, she was asleep. And then Anthony and Tony were in the back and they were asleep because we were coming back from the coast. And I was like, hey. And then by the time everybody woke up, it was gone. But it was just this thing in the sky. And I just, why is that area so full of all this activity? I don't know. But the Dogman and the Bigfoot, they do overlap. But we have gotten encounters from people multiple times of them fighting. And not just fighting with one another, but fighting with other things, other phenomena out there. But then you do get stories of them working together. Now, Barton Nunley, we were mentioning him earlier. If you get to Barton's story, like the Spotsville Monster, he needs to hurry up and write that book. But he was, he's been working on it. But I think it's going to be very telling in the way that there were 2 different types of creatures. One looked very ape-like. The other one looked kind of like a Dogman, but the ears didn't stand up on top like you would think of as a Dogman. The ears were down, like they were lower on the head, and very different than what I saw. What I saw, which was also seen by half a dozen other people from the time that I saw mine, I believe was the first sighting of that fall.
Yeah.
The only other encounter that was anywhere close to mine had happened in June, July. My bad. So it was in July, around July 4th or something like that, which I got that not too long ago. Very quick encounter involved some teenagers that were partying, hanging out, and it was like I said, it was 4th of July. And then there was like they saw it and they went behind some bushes in a fence, and then there was nothing until what I saw with my best friend, October 31st. But then there was like one in November, and then like 3 in December, and then one in January, right at the beginning of January. So, and some of those are in my book actually, and I've interviewed these people, and they're all from the same area from my hometown. So there was like this spate of reports, I guess. What would you call it? Like a flap? You know? And so they but if you look at some of those areas, one of the ranchers I interviewed out near Giddings, Texas, he introduced me to another guy another rancher that was closer to Washington County, and he said that he had seen a Dogman looking creature, and he didn't say it was a Dogman, but when I asked him, his name's Earl, but I said, Earl, what is it that you saw back in 1977? He goes, this thing was like a huge ape-like creature in the way that it was on 2 legs. He goes, but I'll be damned if it had a wolf's head on it. And I said, when he started describing it, I said, that sounds like a werewolf. And he goes, yeah, I know. And I was like, well, your neighbor that's, of course he's 16 miles, to the southeast of him. I said, your neighbor, down here, up the road, he saw something that looks more Bigfoot-like, but it had a muzzle, but they were distinctly different because the one that Earl saw, as compared to the one that the other rancher with his son and his nephew saw, they saw something that looked like kind of like a short muzzle, Bigfoot-like. Other than that, but it had a muzzle. We would call that a gugwe based on the Algonquin legend. But then what this other guy saw, what Earl saw, was completely different to me. It did not look like that. It was very wolf-like. And he said the head, it was weird because he said the head looked like it was too small for the body, like the shoulders were way oversized. And it had a head that was big, but the shoulders were just so big that it made the head look small almost. And I said, how big would this head be? He said, probably the size of a bull's, but like a really large bull's head. And he said, dude, it had really, really sharp, tall ears, which is not something that was reported by the other guy. So these were 2 different things. Like I said, 16 miles apart. And then you have this whole thing that Barton Nunnally had going on in Spotsville, Kentucky. 2 different creatures running around together, but they were distinctly different. They looked totally different in Barton's opinion, other than they were furry and they were big, tall, bipedal. They didn't look the same. Now, the thing that I saw on October 31st did look a little different than the one that Phil Balcar in my book, him and Sean saw. That thing looks like it looked like it had a ridge on its back, about the same color, but it wasn't as massive as what I saw. And so you're wondering, like, that's 2 different things, but it was part of that same flap, And so what's going on here? Like, why are these creatures looking different, but they're seen in the same area? And then we've gotten so many reports. One of them, Minnesota. I know, Anthony, you remember this? There was a reddish brown creature that was seen running around with a bigger black one.
Yeah.
And the lady said, if I didn't know any better, I'd think that the black one was like a black bear, really enlarged, bred with a gorilla. She's like, if you took a gorilla and spliced it with a black bear. She even said that the muzzle, there was like a short muzzle that was brown on it, but it looked gorilla-like in the head. But it was running around with this orange-looking creature that had a really flat face and normal-looking human teeth, kind of like what you described.
Yeah.
And so what brings these creatures together? Like, what are they doing? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a weird, it doesn't make sense. But, so people who are out there looking for just a flesh and blood ape, they're going to be stumped in a lot of ways because they're not going to know what they're dealing with. Now, these things can appear as flesh and blood. They can do all kinds of things, flesh and blood. I believe they can kill you.
Yeah.
But you're dealing with something that's not, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. And if you're dealing with a population like, okay, take the Florida skunk ape, for example. That thing looks like some sort of black, to me, the reports that I've gotten, I've gotten about 3 or 4 that all kind of match up. And it's like a black orangutan. To me, that's what it sounds like. I don't know. And I think it's a very flesh and blood creature. But then, my friend Ken Gerhardt, who's a true aper, like he threw me a curveball the other night, and he said that he had gotten a couple of reports of the Florida skunk ape looking distinctly Bigfoot-like, and even, having some sort of weird qualities that don't go along with, the normal Bigfoot reports. Because I was thinking the skunk ape phenomena, I think that's definitely something physical. I had talked about that. I think it was Gary Brand that came on the show with Within the Midst.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it was him and I. He was on the show, like on the live stream. Folks, if you're not listening to the live stream, you're missing out on a lot of great interviews on Fridays. But I know that we talked. I think it was him and I talked about that it was a physical thing. Now, what are your thoughts on all these different things running around together? I mean,
my thoughts on them, and I've heard a lot of it before, and I've heard people go on to the side of the fence on interbreeding. And my thought just on interbreeding, just to put it into perspective, at one time in my life, I was working, I've been a meat cutter for a long time. I was working in the state of New Hampshire. I can't say exactly where, but in the state of New Hampshire. And what had happened is the place I was working at, it was a small town. They basically shut down for the fair and everything. And so a bunch of us went to the fair. And if you're like me, I'm sure you're like me, Josh. You walk around, you're a people person. You're just checking people out, looking around and everything. And I'll tell you, is all the women look like Daisy Duke, okay? And but lo and behold, because of interbreeding, you could tell that there was interbreeding once they started to walk. Severe interbreeding will do that, deform a person, their bones, or disable them in some way, which is a shame. But when I take that and I apply that to the Sabe or the Sasquatch people, what if at one point they were separated from, because we know their family units are, and I've got reports from friends of mine too, their family unit is like normally 2 offspring. I never hear of it being 3 or 4 or anything like that. 1 or 2 offspring. So a family unit of 4, and then from there you've got clans, and I strongly believe that those clans mark their territories. But let's just say for some odd reason that they were, say, Civil War, for instance, that they were separated from other clans. Now, the Native Americans, okay, had different, like the Turtle Clan, the Bear Clan, okay, and it would be circles. They could lay out in front of you in circles on who you could go and marry, okay? You weren't allowed to marry anybody within your circle because that was a direct family member. You had to marry like 3, 4 circles out. So let's say something was going on here in the United States where they weren't able to breed with other ones of their kind. And because of the interbreeding that was going on, they now have these problems that in their looks, I don't know if I should really go into the part where you get a German Shepherd and a Great Dane. It doesn't mean anything because they're both dogs. So, that doesn't stop anything there. If you look at some of the people that say that, like, for instance, the Sasquatch was extremely angry and they find a lone set of prints. Well, could it be because it's no longer in the family unit. It reached a certain age where its mom and dad kicked it out, and now it's looking for a mate, and you happen to come along and you're a threat to something like that. Let's face it, that's, it could be, and that's why these people are being harmed by them, or they're gravitating towards a certain area that's really by another clan that they're not welcome at. We know that one of the things that happened here in Ohio was that chemical spill that went on. And people in all the groups were talking about, do you think that they're going to be affected by the food? The Sasquatch would be affected by the food sources and everything. Most definitely. As what you want to watch for is you want to watch for all your eyewitness accounts starting to pick up. That'll tell you right there where they're moving to. And sure enough, all their eyewitness accounts started picking up. So what if we got all this interbreeding that happened, and that's why we've got so many different kinds? Because we do know that in the Native American legends, which is really history, they're only really describing, I believe, two kinds, and one that will not tolerate us at all, and then the other one that is a little bit more forgiving, and that's probably the one I came across. But maybe it's just that, Josh. Maybe there's so much interbreeding going on there that's what they're doing. And also, I mean, you look at Native Americans, if they went to steal some horses off of another nation or whatever, there was going to be some trouble there. So what's to say that maybe they really don't try to steal a puppy off of these dogmen, and that's their battleground right there, the no loan zone, as we call it, right there. That's their battlefield. You're not welcome over here because you're stealing my puppies, and you're not welcome over here because you're trying to kill our offspring. Could be fight over something like that. Just throwing it out there. It's something to marinate on for a couple of seconds on that interbreeding. I believe it could be going on.
I don't know. What are your thoughts, Anthony?
I mean, I think anything's possible. Like, we have to keep an open mind to pretty much any idea when it comes to this, because we can postulate on things all day long, but ultimately we have to admit that we really don't know for sure what we're talking about or what we're dealing with here. I mean,
exactly.
We've heard some really strange things. So,
yeah, exactly. I mean, really, we can't throw it away. We have to look at it, but really the only way we're going to know that is by taking that next step and communicating with one. We've heard of it in historically with Mary Green and people like that. That they need to take it. Somebody needs to take it to that next level. We're not going to know anything unless we get it right from them. That's the bottom line. Unless you can study them, and nobody's going to walk around with them for 1,000 miles or 2,000 miles. That's ridiculous. You have the story of the leather man in Connecticut, a bona fide, human being that he made his clothes all out of leather. And this guy would walk this 362-mile loop, I believe. And every 31 or 32 days, he would be back in the same town in Connecticut and then go back out on that loop again. And he did that for over 25 years. You could set your clock to it. Think of how many miles that guy walked in a day or in his lifetime. What is that, 70,000 miles? Where was
crazy.
He eating? Exactly. So until we find, our research leads us to accept the fact is we can communicate with them, we're not going to know anything. And shooting one and killing it, well, then you'll have the proof sitting there. You'll have the DNA sitting there. You'll know where its brain is located and where its heart is located, but you ain't going to know anything else about it. You'll even know what it had to eat, but you're not going to know anything about the structure of family unit or anything else about it. When they breed, their gestation period, you won't know anything. Somebody needs to make the next step forward and try to, communicate with them and go from there. Otherwise, what are we going to do? You know?
Yeah, and I got to be honest, I don't think that step's ever going to be really successfully taken, because I don't think that these Bigfoot, Dogman, any of these cryptids are going to allow anyone to encroach on their territory to that extent.
You're right. You're right. They would rather, you know, I had another opinion that I thought about a lot of these people that have these farms way out there, and they leave food for them. And eventually they come and they pick up the food. But when they cut the food source off, they get real mad. They get angry. Okay. Well, let's face it. If you were paying a bodyguard to, you were giving him money or food every single week for him and his family, and then all of a sudden you cut the money and the food off, I think they might get a little mad at you because they're guarding you. What if that's what's going on? What if this Sasquatch or whatever is actually guarding that area, that they can live there, that's their home, as long as they take care of the farmers or whatever they're in that area? And maybe that's what's making them angry. What if that's going on? I had one case that I've heard where this gentleman's grandfather owned a farm, and he was feeding them watermelons. And when his grandfather passed away, this gentleman decided about 2 weeks later to go up there and spend the night up there at the farm, which he did. But when he got up the next morning, there was 2 watermelons out on the porch area. And he decided at that point, because he remembered the grandfather telling him the stories and what he was feeding them, he decided to go to the cemetery where his grandfather was buried. And when he got to the cemetery, he went to his grandfather's headstone, and the headstone was enveloped like in the whole area where the body would be was enveloped in a wreath a couple of feet high, all woven from briars. And in the middle, right in front of the headstone, was some apples or something. There was some fruit right there as a gift. I mean, people say, well, where's the bodies and stuff? They could be doing anything with their dead. We just conveniently put ours in a cemetery, but I mean, even an elephant will cover up, one of its dead and something like that. So what if I wanted to keep somebody away from a relative of mine that passed away, that we were out after an apocalypse, let's say, well, I'm going to probably cover it up with rocks, or let's put some briars around it. That ought to stop people from going in there and digging. Now you watch everybody run out and start digging up all the raspberry patches over that one. Watch out for snakes.
Yeah.
They like raspberries too, and birds who go get the raspberries.
Or here in Texas, dewberries, as we call them, but they're actually blackberries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The old timers always called them dewberries. And they're Mustang grapes too, in those vines. That always got copperheads hanging around underneath them.
Yeah.
Rattlesnakes underneath the freaking dewberries.
Yeah. And a lot of these people are going out there doing these Sasquatch and stuff. They're just wandering around the woods. I'm just wondering why nobody's ever gotten seriously injured.
Oh, I'm sure they have. I know one guy got shot at. There was a guy here in Texas, and Anthony, this. He told us, and Anthony figured out that there were purple posts there.
Yeah,
that was right out here right where we're building our house. And this guy's like, "Yeah, I didn't know about that." And I was like, "Well, you do now, because you walked onto their property, and he was going squatching." And it was like, "Yeah, that's not a smart thing to do." Another guy, we work out at the gym. We don't really work out with him, but he's there at the same time we are a lot of times, and he told us that the same thing happened. He went out looking, for Sasquatch, and somebody took a pot shot at him up in Oklahoma. And I told him, I said, "That's about right. You probably, this area down here, you probably shouldn't be, I'd say if you're in Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, I'd say a lot of the ranchers in New Mexico, probably.
Yeah.
You might want to not do that because
yeah, it's not smart to go tromping around on rural land.
Mm-hmm. They're real serious about it. I was in New Mexico years ago, right outside of Roswell. I was in, where was I at? Let's see. No. I was in Lincoln. It was Lincoln County. It was right there. It was a desolate area. That's where Billy the Kid and everything, they were riding through there. And I stopped to take a leak, and these two cowboys came right up on the four-wheelers, and they were just mending the fences, and they were like, hey, what's up? And they waved, and one of them had a rifle right there, and I was looking, I was like a 308 or something, and I was just like, hey, what's up? And they're like, oh, you're just taking a leak right here. And I'm like, yeah, I'm on the highway here. I just had to stop, and they were just, they didn't know what I was doing, and I had, I see them riding up, and I'm like, crap, and they pulled up, and I mean, they could have, if they wanted to, and there would have been nobody else around. It was just me and them, and I just said, hey man, it's all good. And they were actually pretty friendly. And I was like, where are you from? I said, I'm from Texas. I'm driving back through. And I was coming down from, I think I was in Colorado, and I had gone to visit a friend probably 20 years ago. And it wasn't just me. My brother was asleep in the truck. But I said, yeah, it's just me and my brother. We're coming back down from Colorado. And we cut through to visit a friend. And so, yeah, we ended up talking. But, there's nobody there, nobody out there at all. I mean, and it was evening, and it was like in late October or something like that. It could have easily been, they could have just shot me, and nobody would have ever known.
Yeah, that happens. That happens up around the Appalachian Trails, the Green Mountains, places like that. People disappear because maybe they wind up in somebody's pot patch, and they're not supposed to. Yeah. They're not supposed to be there, and they decide they're going to start rolling one. Well, good way to get in trouble, particularly when you're way up in the backwoods. Nobody knows you're there. People don't walk in New Hampshire, the state that I used to live in. If you wanted to go up Mount Washington, you had to fill out a whole plan, like you're getting ready to fly an airplane or something, your flight plan, because the weather could change so drastically. So anything can happen when you walk into places like that. I think they're a little bit nicer maybe out where you are, Josh.
I mean, I think that they're nicer in the way that like they're a little more like, hey, how you doing, howdy, but
yeah,
they're still pretty quick because I wasn't really on the other side of their fence, and if I was walking through, it might have been a different story, and people don't really prowl around like they used to because there's cameras that people can see their property, and they'll come riding out there real fast on a horse or on a four-wheeler. And I know a lot of old cowboys and that'll just shoot first, ask questions later. And I don't know if anybody knows, but a 308 will knock a hole in you the size of Dallas. And so it's going to knock you down real fast. And that's what the one guy had. I didn't see the other one, what he had, but I think he might have had a 22-250 or something like that. But I just remember looking over and kind of going like, oh, these guys got rifles and sidearms. I didn't know what the sidearms were. But I was just like, man, they were nice, they were friendly, and I said, yeah, I'm not. I just had to pull over, and they were like, no, we're just in the area mending our fences, and I always ask weird questions, and we're out there in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, and I said, have you ever seen anything weird? And the one guy goes, oh yeah, but he didn't elaborate, and I didn't go, well, I just finished peeing on your property. Can you tell me about?
Yeah,
that would have been awkward. So I just like, okay, well, no, they didn't offer, so I just said, okay, well, I'm out of here. But there are some cases where people have said, I know that somebody went out looking for Sasquatch and they never came back. That doesn't necessarily mean that Sasquatch got them.
That's right.
It could be somebody else got them.
Exactly.
Another phenomena that we haven't touched on is like feral people.
Well, that is something else too. But you can usually find them because there's usually a lot of banjo music playing.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say it.
No, there have been some weird stories, man, about feral people like being in areas where people have gone looking for Dogman and Bigfoot. There was somebody that told me, I mean, and it doesn't take much for somebody to go feral. I mean, I'm not joking. Like it just, a generation or two, they can just start living out on their own, and they're just used to being out there in the middle of nowhere. And, somebody stumbles upon them. And there were some ghost hunters that actually went and explored an abandoned house. And the couple that they ran into was crazy. They told me this was in Australia. And they ran into some people who were near an old mining camp. And it was from some people that I had told their story on the show. And then they got back in touch with me. They said, hey, our cousin Gail wants to talk to us. I talked to her. And then they gave me this crazy story about this, but I'm going to tell it on the show at some point. But it's just like, man, you go over there, you're just going to investigate an old haunted house, and you got Deliverance coming at you.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, you never got to see the movie, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you might want to, verse yourself on it, where you go run around people's old farms, particularly way up in the country.
Or Wolf Creek. Wolf Creek, that show, man, that guy, Mick Taylor, I mean, that was a fictional guy, but he was a composite based on real people. Those guys that were killing people on the outback, serial killers. Same thing with Chainsaw Massacre was based on Ed Gein. Same thing. He was a serial killer. You don't know people. You don't know anybody who knows, man? Like, there's no telling. Somebody could smile at you all day. Like these people there were people that worked with Jeffrey Dahmer every day and didn't know what he was doing.
Exactly.
John Wayne Gacy.
Ted Bundy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All of them. Yeah. They had no idea that Gacy's running around measuring how tall their grass was.
Yeah. He was something else, man. He was just like, he was the manager of a KFC and he pretended to be a clown and
he worked for the town.
Well, I had somebody recently, this is funny, that there was a bumper sticker that said, remember Ted Bundy was a Republican. And I pulled up next to this lady, and I don't get political, but I told her, I said, and John Wayne Gacy was a Democrat. And she's like, excuse me? I said, John Wayne Gacy was a Democrat. I was Ted Bundy was a Republican. John Wayne Gacy was a Democrat. And both of them were big, staunch supporters of their party. Serial killers come in all shapes and forms, I mean, the most prolific serial killer is an African-American guy, Samuel Little, killed 100 women. He strangled them. And it was the wife of the lead guitarist of Weezer who was like interviewing this guy. And this guy admitted to all this crazy stuff. And he was doing it all across the country. And it's really, really weird, man. Like when you think about how easy it is for these people to slip through the cracks and just go unnoticed.
Look at Pee Wee Gaskin.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, he killed just about everybody in town except the waitress.
I mean, look at all these, and so I had somebody that was saying something about the Headless Valley. I think it's in Canada.
Nahanni,
yeah, right. And they were like, how could that be going on for all those years? I said, how did Ted Bundy kill all those people all those years?
That's right. I mean, and who goes in there?
Yeah.
Who the hell goes in there? I mean, you heard me a little while last week there that the wardens used to have us go in if somebody was lost because they didn't like going in there, and we knew the area very well. So I don't think somebody comes up missing and they're in the Nahanni National Forest, you're pretty much, bear poop or something. They're not going to come in and find you. They have no idea where to look for you. It's so hard to get in there. So anybody could be running around, a bunch of feral people playing the banjo. Who knows?
Same thing with Cato Lake.
Yeah.
I mean, like people talk about Lake Cato, whatever. That place in Canada is really creepy. I've heard so many weird stories out of that place. There was a creature that somebody had seen. They gave me a story about it. And I told you, Anthony, I said it looked like that Wendigo from the Marvel comics.
Yeah.
And if the lady wasn't 66 years old, I would have been like, is this a Marvel comic character? Because I kind of thought it was. And she's like, no, we were in the Nahanni National Forest. And she told me point blank, she said it was white and it had a long tail and it had a weird protruding forehead. She said it looked caveman-like, but it had white hair all over it. Not fur, hair. She said it was nude. You could see male genitalia, but she said that this thing had a protruding forehead, long hair, but it had a tail and really weird, elongated hands. And they had heard shrieking noises like coming from this thing. I'm going to talk about it on the live stream, but it's just one of those weird stories, And she asked me what I knew about the Nahanni Forest. I told her, I said, I know that it's called the Headless Valley, and there's a place where you don't want to go.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Why push your luck? Absolutely. I wouldn't go in there. Not really, to tell you the truth. I wouldn't go in there. I would. There'd be no way. Not by myself. I'm pretty sure there's something real bad going on in there. Just me, Josh. I hate to sound like a sissy, but what
about Port Lock in Alaska?
Oh, that one
same
too.
thing.
Yeah,
I've talked to a lot of people about that. Yeah. There's some areas that are just like I mean, you know, when I had Eric Palacios on the show, he's an investigative journalist who works for the UT network over here in Austin, and he's done a documentary, The Beast of Brushy Creek, and the reports that we were going over together, some of these stories that I got and he got, and you put them together, and you're like, damn, dude, and you were talking about the Flash of Beauty, the Jill Remenschneider and Brett, what's his name, Eichenberger? Is it Eichenberger?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. And they did a part 2 to that. So yeah, that they're another one. Like those guys, they're all doing this work on these documentaries on these creatures. And I tell you what, man, it's very telling. And you can't really say in an area that's populated, even like over here at Brushy Creek's now populated. It wasn't until the last 10 years. But even now, with as populated as it is, we're still pulling reports out of that area. And so there's no telling, you know, what could be in your own backyard. I'll say this. You don't have to go far flung, like to go find something. You just look in your own backyard. Linda Godfrey said it on my show. Very good friend of mine. She once said that when Tony asked her the question, if somebody wants to start researching, she's like, go start in your own backyard. Because and you can make these documentaries now and put them on Amazon, you know, like the documentaries that Garitano's made, the shows that he's made, the shows that Palacios has made, and now with Brett and Jill. I mean, and they've all done really good work. I'm impressed, you know, and now I'm going to try and do it too in the spring. Hopefully it doesn't come out like crap. So far, everything I've done has been okay. But I'm going to try my hand at documentary, and I'm going to be doing that with David Weatherly this coming spring. But we're going to explore the Devil's Backbone in a few places and different, yeah. Because David was saying that he turned 60 at my house, which I'm honored to say. He was there hanging out with me. We went to dinner on his birthday, and him and his wife were there, and with my wife, and we were all talking, and we were telling stories about the Devil's Backbone, and he was like, "Wow, I just turned 60," and Josh Turner's house talking about the Devil's Backbone. And I thought that was pretty cool. So we started talking, and I said, we ought to do a documentary. So I talked to Eric about it, and I think we're going to do it. And we're going to, but I think it needs to be explored, these reports that we get of like all this weird stuff. And David said it. He said, I would put this area up against any other area, whether it is Skinwalker Ranch or the LBL, any of these places, there is so much weird stuff going on, and you don't know what you can come across. You don't know what could happen. I mean, we talk to these farmers and these ranchers, these rural people, and then you're thinking, I was driving into San Marcos, and I was actually with you, Anthony and Tony, and I think we were with Scorpion. I think it was Scorpion. It was about 5 years ago, and we were going through the Devil's Backbone, and I remember saying, and Scorpion said something like, I think he goes, at least it's out in the country. And I said, dude, people see this stuff in town. Yeah. And then we went over to Arash's, the rail. What's that place he owns now? The rail yard. And we were there a few years ago with Marty. I think when Willie was still alive too. And we were eating, and Marty was like, we were talking about that zip code, that 666, and everybody's all, those college kids wear those shirts and they think it's cool or whatever. Well, this one girl had told us this story, and she was from the Hernandez Ranch. Her friend was Angelica, the one that had the weird encounter that's in my book. And her uncle was Joe. He was the one that had an encounter out near Wimberley. But this Dogman looking creature came right down the alley. And I think it was because they had messed with the Ouija board and they tried to summon it. And of course, Angelica,
that's not cool.
Yeah, she asked the question, what did my uncle see? Well, that Ouija board showed her. But then the one girl went unconscious. She passed out. And then after that, something was following her. And it was right there in the alley, right there by the rail yard where Arash's bar is at. Somebody messaged me the other day and asked me about that. And I said, I gave him the coordinates. I said, it's right there. He doesn't care. It's go there and have a burger and drink a beer, whatever. But I was like, these things will follow you into town. What I saw was in town. It was not, of course, it's a rural town, and it's but it's right there in town. I mean, it can happen anywhere. I'm convinced of that. I believe it can happen anywhere. You don't really know, and I mean, you get these weird
if you don't
reports.
Believe it. Yeah, if you didn't believe that there was a rabbit in your backyard, you're probably not going to see it when you go out there. Mm-mm. And I think you're exactly right. If you don't believe there's one going to be in an alley or in town, in a small town or whatever, you're probably not gonna see it, but
you're not gonna be ready for it if something happens.
Could see it too.
I tell you this. What the last thing I guess I got to ask you is what are your thoughts going forward? I mean, do you once thought they were flesh and blood, now you believe that there could be anything, or what are your thoughts? I mean,
I believe the same as Ron Moorhead. I believe in the quantum thought on what's going on here now. That the evidence is leading towards them being able to use like 30% of their mind. People say, well, if a dolphin can use 20, we can only use 10. And why isn't a dolphin building boats? Well, think about it. There is a lot of things they can do that we can't do. And there is, it could be, I can't throw it out. My thoughts going forward is they're here, according to native legends and stuff, that in the final days, would just go right down that rabbit hole, that Big Brother will come back to dance around the sacred fire one more time, and they will fight this last battle with us between good and evil. And perhaps they're trying to teach us how to use our mind, but when you go up and knock on the door and then you run away, then what the hell is the owner of that house going to be thinking about you? They don't really want to talk to you anymore. Just stay away. You're obviously an idiot. And maybe that's the way they look at us. Like, we're idiots. We're below that. So how do you teach somebody that? Obviously they can communicate. The other ones, that's going to be kudos to the people that are going out there looking for Dogman, particularly in the dark.
Oh man, I think technology is a dual-edged sword. I think that technology has weakened us. I think it's made us fat and lazy, and I think it's really hurt us in a lot of ways.
Yeah, we're too dependent.
But also it's allowed us to reach people. Like, we wouldn't be able to do this show without technology. So it's like, it's a catch-22. I don't like it, but it's like necessary evil,
Yeah, you got a good point there. Absolutely.
I think it kind of leads us away from where we need to be, but then again, it brings us closer. So it's hard to say. I don't like AI. I think it's a terrible thing. But the thing about the dolphin thing, what you said here, I'll say that really quickly. They don't need it. They're doing whatever and then there's all this debate. I was reading in a magazine the other day. I read all these science magazines, and they were like, well, we use more than 10% or whatever. And then some of them say we're only using this much. And then, if you look at like a scan, they'll show like the brain activity. And I can't remember which magazine I was reading. It might've been Smithsonian or Scientific American, but I was reading an article, and just a few months ago, and I remember it was showing like the part of the brain that was responding to all these different types of stimuli. And there are areas of the brain that do not really light up. So that is true. I mean, and then they say, no, that's not true. We use all of the brain at some point in time, but we're not using it all at one time. That's the thing. If we were, imagine what you could do, because I think one part closes, another part opens type thing. Neural pathways, they're very resilient.
Yeah. That's why I personally look at everybody in the eyes when I'm talking to them. I want to make sure the lights are on.
Yeah.
That's very rare nowadays. You can't even get a person that, it's so ridiculous when you're trying to interview. Dude, I've had people in this very office, because my office is right next to my studio. So they'll come in there and they'll be like, I want a job. And I'm like, what's your name? And they're like, John. I'm like, you don't even quickly know your name? How am I going to hire you? Like, how many gummies are you on right now?
Yeah. All the toys jumped out of the toy box,
Look them in the eye. It's like, that's not even a question of looking them in the eye. You might as well nobody's home. You can tell.
You're scary. Put a collar on them.
It's like the lights are on, but no one's home.
No one's home. Yeah, somebody knocked the lights out.
Get a little doghouse for you out there.
Well, that would be a good reason for Bigfoot to stay the hell away. I could see that, but
maybe get a couple Looney Tunes.
So, folks, that's all the time we got for Paranormal Roundtable, and thank you for coming on, Ernie.
Awesome.
Any final thoughts,
you.
Anthony? You want to close it out, or?
I just want to thank you, Ernie, for sharing all you have to share, for sharing your own experiences and your own knowledge, and I just really appreciate different perspectives, and I think that it's important that we bring every perspective to the table and just let people make up their own minds, because ultimately, that's all we can do is we can choose what to believe. We might be right. We might be wrong. Fact is, I don't think we're ever going to know.
Yeah. And getting people to come on like Ernie did to come and tell his encounters. And good luck to you in the future, Ernie, and stay in touch. And is there a way that do you want people to reach out to you, or would you rather stay not anonymous?
Well, I mean, they can, like I say, people like you guys, yeah, absolutely. You know, general public, I mean, they're going to have to understand that they're going to have to go through a little vetting process, because I'm going to check you out before I ever accept,
absolutely.
Anybody on there. So many people getting hacked and everything.
Oh man,
I'm going to have to up it where you're going to have to know at least 10 of my contacts and be part psychic.
Yeah, well, that's probably a good policy. I'm glad that Matt introduced us. He reached out to me and said, hey, he goes, you should really reach out to this guy, Ernie. So kudos to Matt Imps. He's got a new show, folks. It's called Planet 412. Go check him out too. And he's made the rounds, and he's doing what he's supposed to do. He was at my conference, as was Ron Moorhead, as was Barton Nunley, as was pretty much everybody at the Cryptid community. But so folks, thank you for tuning in, and good night.